Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am the host as always. Joining me is my guy, Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Doing well. Today is my last day off of summer. Tomorrow I start teaching again. I'm excited for sure. Very, very excited to get back to work and meet these new kids.
Yeah. My wife is, back in her meetings and things like that. Today they had their big Clovis West rah get together, meeting that they do every single year. And her kids are back Monday is when they get in person with all of their students. So, if you know a teacher who is back in school this week or next week, send some good vibes their way. Summer break is obviously over, and wish everybody a happy school year that is working in the industry this year.
Yes.
All right. So we have prepared a show today about Chargers and their quarterback situation. Obviously, we hear everybody loud and clear. They are not happy about the backup quarterback position for the Chargers. The YouTube comments from Sunday were very apparent about that feeling. Facebook, Twitter, everybody kind of is a little fed up with the quarterback situation. So we wanted to kind of dive into, first of all, Easton Stick and really like, what do the numbers say? What does the film say? And then we'll talk about some other options that the Chargers might have. Before we get to that point, we do want to mention briefly some of the latest moves that the Chargers have made. Joe Ortiz pointed out back in April that they really believe in kind of churning over the bottom of the roster until they find some guys that they think can contribute. And they've done that. So first of all, they did release quarterback Casey Bauman. No real surprise. He was the only quarterback who didn't play on Saturday in the preseason game. So the Chargers essentially rolling with Easton Stick, Luis Perez, Max Duggan, until obviously Justin Herbert comes back. In response to that, they did sign wide receiver Isaiah Wooden, an undrafted free agent type of quarterback. And then also recently they released Ben Mason and signed linebacker Shaq Quarterman. Obviously that's kind of a move that we will mainly focus on here in a minute because of the roster implications there. And then also today they re-signed, I should say, Savion Jackson, the edge rusher, and waived cornerback Chris Wilcox, the cornerback. So few moves to dive into there, but we're not going to spend a ton of time on them. The main one is the Ben Mason implications here for the Chargers and specifically for Jordan McFadden.
Yeah, the whole Ben Mason signing, we connected the Chargers to Ben Mason. Everybody did. It was very easy. The difference is we and many others recognize that there was only one NFL snap played for Ben Mason at his time in the NFL. Some people went with hit and ran to like future Hall of Fame Kyle Juszczyk, fullback type status. We kind of kept it in the middle, if not a bit more pessimistic, given the fact that he didn't play a ton. And then we liked the other, tight end options, maybe even Luke Benson to be the fullback that takes it, and he still could. But right now, this is just the runway for Jordan McFadden to be their fullback one. Does it make him officially like the H-back? Maybe that ends up being Luke Benson, or you can use Stone Smart in different ways, or Donald Parham, or whatever. But it does give him runway to be the true, legitimate fullback one. And it's super, super fascinating. The part that I'm curious about is how does he do in the run game? How does he do in the passing game? We saw him get 2 snaps at fullback to open the game against the Seahawks. And those runs went for I think 3 and 4. I think it was 3.5 yards per carry on those 2 runs.
Yeah.
I don't think that was Jordan McFadden's fault.
Right.
But I'm more curious how he does in the passing game because I'm a nerd and I talk to the Blobfish man so much. Patrick Ricard specifically actually is not a very good, or his receptions do not produce EPA per play that is even positive. It's actually negative. Patrick Ricard is not the individual we should be comparing Jordan McFadden's pass catching role to, because we see him catching passes in practice. And we're like, oh my gosh, they're going to use him like Patrick Ricard. They might, but it hasn't been successful. It's actually, I'm going to write an article about this, but you guys are listening, so here you go. It's Bruce Miller we need to be looking at. Bruce Miller's EPA per play as the pass catching fullback for the 49ers back when Greg Roman was with the 49ers is outstanding. Like would have been the second best offense in the league last year. Now, I know that's not how it works. That's a fullback. So I'm just saying, moving forward, keep an eye on how he does as a pass catcher.
Yeah, we haven't seen it a ton yet. It's mostly been like flat routes and things like that. But when you're just kind of a peek behind the curtain here, when you are a credentialed member of the media at Chargers training camp, you're not really supposed to tweet out like specifics, and you're not supposed to like ask specific questions about scheme and Jordan McFadden does this or this or this in practice. You're really just supposed to report on who's practicing, and then afterwards you can kind of do any reporting that you want. When I was credentialed on the sidelines and I saw Jordan McFadden line up in the slot and jet motion and then run a route, I lost my mind. I was like the most excited I've been at a football practice, I think, in my entire life. All kidding aside, it's just they really believe in his versatility, and they really are showing that this is a guy who can be a legitimate weapon for them in the run game and potentially in the pass game. So he is fullback one. He is essentially that roster spot that they had pegged for a true fullback is essentially Jordan McFadden. So it gives them a lot of flexibility, in terms of the actual roster. If you were somebody who prescribed to the belief that Ben Mason was going to lock up a roster spot, we probably only get 3 tight ends. Now you can keep 4 tight ends because you have that one fullback, or you can keep 4 running backs. You can keep 6 defensive tackles. It essentially gives them a free roster spot, which is going to be interesting to see how they ultimately decide to handle that. But I cannot wait to see what Jordan McFadden looks like in an actual regular season game. I thought it was so fitting that they came out and ran him out there as the fullback to start the preseason twice, not just the first time, but the second down as well. So I can't wait to see it. I think it's a role that is a bit unique here for what this kind of player has given them in the past, because he is so athletic for his size. Patrick Ricard, yes, he could, block well, and he was tough and he was physical, but he wasn't the athlete that Jordan McFadden was for his size. Jordan McFadden for his size is a legit elite athlete. So I think Greg Roman can have a lot of fun with this over the next couple of years, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it's going to be super exciting. I assume, unless maybe Zion doesn't start, and obviously if Trey isn't playing or whatever, I assume that McFadden will get early reps again at fullback, because then he'll have to just play guard. I don't think they would just randomly switch unless they want to have him play fullback in the fourth quarter, which fine. That sounds fun. Go beat up some 4th stringers in the fourth quarter. But yeah, curious to see how they continue with this. Curious if they bring in another guard, or they're really comfortable with Foster Sarell at guard, and therefore McFadden, hey, I know you're 303 pounds. You don't have to be anymore if you want to drop the weight, get a bit faster and twitch,
be 275, 280.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
that's I don't know if that'll happen this year, but I'm curious if they start to lean that way moving forward. I can't imagine Ricard is still his 295 or whatever he was in his RAS. I guess we could look up it as we're going. So I'll look up his RAS. And you can tell me what he's currently at based on the NFL website. But he was not light. I think he was pretty close to 300.
Pro Football Reference still has him at 305.
So he gained weight from his RAS. Okay. He's just enormous. I never looked at Patrick Ricard and thought he looked bigger than Jordan McFadden, so maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. He's got the fullback defensive tackle set up as opposed to the offensive lineman setup. So we got to tweak the swag for Jordan McFadden and make him look like an actual fullback. But I think if Jordan McFadden is called upon to play actual offensive line, I think they would just kind of handle that with Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst, so to speak, in that kind of role. We kind of wanted and maybe hoped that Luke Benson would get some real fullback snaps, but that's just kind of not really been his role. I think he's been more kind of a Hayden Hurst replacement than a Will Dissly replacement, or more of a big receiver type. But in the preseason game, once McFadden started playing guard, that's when Zach Hines kind of played fullback. And so I think that's kind of their preference, is Jordan McFadden is fullback 1. And after that, it would be some combination of probably Will Dissly, Hayden Hurst and maybe Stone Smart if you want to do some like H-back Isaiah Likely type things.
Yeah.
But man, I do think that like for the team, the best possible thing for Jordan McFadden is for him to strictly focus on, playing fullback and tight end, as crazy as that sounds, just because it gives them some real versatility and it gives them some real, tenacity, physicality back there that a 240-pound fullback just can't give them. So I think his value to the team is higher at that role. And so I do kind of wish they would go sign, some kind of backup guard to allow him to focus on that spot. And essentially he would be your break glass in case of emergency offensive lineman number 9 and your fullback 1. I think that for me is Jordan McFadden's ideal role with this specific team at this point.
Yeah, I agree. So looking at Daniel Popper's projection for the roster after the first preseason game, he went with 3 tight ends: Will Dissly, Hayden Hurst, and Stone Smart.
Yeah.
Do we feel that was a direction the Chargers would go, or do you think they now keep 4? And then what do you make of Smart over Parham as is, considering I know it's not quite fullback, but it is in the same kind of realm?
Yeah. I think some people probably would be a little bit surprised about Smart over Parham, but Smart's had a better training camp and he's had a better offseason just in general because he hasn't been injured. And Donald Parham has dealt with several things, as he kind of tends to do, unfortunately. So I wouldn't be shocked if Donald Parham were a cut candidate, but I just keep going back to that Andy Bischoff category about them just being, tantalized with the athleticism of Donald Parham. So maybe he's not your tight end 3, but I just think it'd be really tough for them, this specific kind of regime that really loves tight ends, to look at Donald Parham and be like, yeah, maybe it's time to move on here. So I do kind of tend to think that the answer here is they do keep the 4 tight ends. And Parham is your tight end 4. He may be inactive on game days type deal, depending on his game roles. But I do kind of think that the 4 tight ends are in place.
Yeah, I agree. Popper also went with 4 running backs, I think.
Yes.
But
we'll go with 4 running backs. Yeah, we'll address that later. I know there's a lot of people kind of freaking out about Kamani Vidal right now. You still got 2 weeks of preseason left to figure that part out. So
yes,
we'll follow up on our pre-training camp 53-man roster again before roster cuts actually happens, because we've already got things that we need to change. I think so. We'll get to that point down the road.
Yeah. Sorry, Jacob's asking, does Smart log special teams reps? Yes, definitely does. Did last year, I believe, played the most special team snaps of any tight end, and Parham Jr. only played 0 special team snaps last year. So it's pretty significant.
Yeah. Smart is a key. I think he's a core 4 special teams player for them. He's on every single, outside of like field goal block, but punt, kickoff, he's on all of them. So he's taken a significantly bigger step as a blocker than I think people would think. I was there last Tuesday and they did this like tight end, edge rusher, safety, linebacker blocking session. And Smart, I would say, was the second best blocker there behind Will Dissly. So, Smart has really kind of put it together. Greg Roman, again, unprompted, compared him to Delaney Walker, who did kind of a similar transition from college. I think he was a receiver, not a quarterback, but, to tight end. So, this is a great environment for Stone to kind of figure it out. And, he's had some really good moments. Like, I think if you go back and watch like the Packers game specifically from last year, as a receiver, he's really flashed some good things. So I'm excited to see what that looks like in 2024.
Yeah, me too. He's continued to ascend. I love the story. Got through some adversity, A, switching to the NFL, and then B, through the injury. So yeah, it's a fun story so far.
All right. So let's get to the backup quarterback situation here. For those who might have missed, it did not go well on Saturday night, and we'll dive into some of that today. But fans are, I think, rightfully frustrated with the lack of a backup quarterback. Although I think a lot of that is just due to the uncertainty of Justin's injury, which Bridget Condon of NFL Network pointed out that his initial diagnosis 2 weeks in a boot, which would be this upcoming Thursday, so 2 days from now. And then theoretically he could start his ramp up to practice. But I happen to think they'll be a little bit more cautious than that. But supposedly Justin Herbert could return soon. I think that would settle a little bit of the unrest. But at the end of the day, fans want to hear about other quarterback options. They want to hear about Easton Stick and really like what is he as a backup quarterback. So that's what we are here to do today.
Yeah, I mean, and we can get into it. We're looking at Easton Stick in 2023. I hate sometimes how StreamYard loads our slides because I swear my OCD would not allow that 2023 to be down there like that.
Anyway, in the Google Slides, it's one line. So just pretend that's one line.
Yeah,
and it looks
I'll share it with you guys. I'll share it, I promise. Anyway, a lot of talk about Easton Stick, and boy, did I see it in the comments of our last video and how dare we talk about Easton Stick in any bit way positive from the past. We really wanted to look at Easton Stick previously and compare him to other backup quarterbacks. None of us are saying that he's a good starter. None of us are even saying that he's an average or even maybe below average starter, but we think he's maybe a good enough backup. But okay, so what did he look like last year? So we compared 22 quarterbacks with at least 100 dropbacks in 2023. And if you average Easton Stick's rankings in all these categories below, he was 12th. So I guess technically that makes him bottom half quarterback, but it's 12th out of 22. So not bad. An average backup last year. And if you're looking at the individual stats, he was 8th in adjusted EPA per play, which is pretty good. He was actually 32nd overall among all quarterbacks in adjusted EPA per play. So technically, he's good enough to start on one team based on that adjusted EPA per play. 8th in success rate, 18th in CPOE, 7th in passer rating, 8th in turnover-worthy play rate, and then 15th in pressure to sack rate. Pressure to sack rate was not good last year. Turnover-worthy play rate, pretty good. Unfortunately, that turnover-worthy play rate really reared its ugly head, and it got really bad on Saturday. So, Steven, any thoughts on last year?
Yeah, so just to clarify, this is 22 like backup level quarterbacks. Like this is not obviously including the star level quarterback. So I think if you kind of polled Chargers fans about like potential options or like where he would compare with like backup quarterbacks, I think they would be pretty surprised with him being 12th out of 22nd of this list. Everybody's clamoring for Ryan Tannehill. We'll get into him in a second here. They were right next to each other, and Ryan Tannehill is like an established veteran. So, last year, Easton Stick ahead of other names like Sam Howell, who, rookie quarterback, last year behind like a terrible offensive line. That's kind of something that I think would surprise people. A lot of people messaged me and saying like, oh, like they should go trade for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. You're choosing the wrong Browns quarterback, first of all. And Easton Stick was significantly better in 2023 than Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Again, different situations. Dorian Thompson-Robinson was a rookie. It just is a different situation. But if we tweeted out the whole list, I think people would be surprised to see the names that Easton Stick is ahead of just based off of how they view Easton Stick right now. But I understand the notion here that the end of last season sucked. It was terrible. It was not fun to watch. It was not fun to cover. But if you actually go back and watch those games, I think the vast majority of the fan base would feel very differently about how Easton Stick played in those games, specifically the Bills game and the Broncos game. The Chiefs game, Chris Jones was playing like a madman in his face and, half a second trying to get that last sack. But, those two games, I think in particular, showed a quarterback who can be a mid-tier backup as the numbers kind of lay out. In the Broncos game, I watched the entire game, the entire tape. He was playing, across the field from Jarrett Stidham, who potentially might start for the Broncos this year. And I would take Easton Stick over Jarrett Stidham right now. And so it's an evaluation that I think is a little too harsh. I understand he played very poorly, but I think if you look at the numbers and you actually go back and watch the tape from last year, you would be pretty surprised that Easton Stick played, I think, better than the fan base gives him credit for.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, playing the starting Bills last year in an actual game, he got to start. And
Bills were a top 10 defense last year.
Yeah,
like Stick played great.
Way better. He played way better than he did on Saturday. And let's get into that now. Looking back at last season, in his previous seasons, and then what happened on Saturday, we're just really talking about all of this. I mean, if you look at just his passer rating, which I know isn't like maybe the greatest thing to go off of, but it's easy data for us. his preseason passer rating between 2019 and 2023, so up until this year, his average was 63.8. So like not amazing, not a 90 by any means, not 100 or 110, 63.8, but it was getting better. I mean, 44.1 when he started, then 94.6, then in 2022, 66.5, last year, 67.2. But then what was really surprising, and what Steven's talking about, is during the regular season in those 4.5 games, his passer rating was 85.7. Again, that is not a perfect passer rating, but 85.7 ain't bad. That is not too bad at all, which is why Steven and I were absolutely gobsmacked to see how bad he was on Saturday, because his game against the Seahawks, his passer rating was 14.6, which was the worst game of his career. It was the worst since 2019 in week 4 against the 49ers, the worst game of his career. I don't know what happened. You know, I don't think this line on paper is so terrible that he was playing in front of, especially because Zion and Alt, like those guys were out there for a little bit, Alt for most of it. He was just flat out awful, which is why we're talking about this video today, this discussion.
Yeah, I would be curious. I mean, we would never know, right? But I would love to be a fly on the wall of this film session, because it just is such an outlier. And I think he's had an up and down training camp. He had an up and down training camp last year. He's a backup quarterback. We're not talking about him like he's a starter. But for this past Saturday to be this much worse, it was a big concern. And you know, I think this is maybe something layered. People asking about him, you know, being injured. I don't think he was injured. I think he's healthy. But there's a human element here that I think it is getting lost about Easton Stick too. And, you know, this is his first chance to be, you know, he's not a starter, right? But he's getting these starter reps for the first time. He's getting more reps than he ever has. He's playing in a new system, as Ed Meese has pointed out, his 5th system in his career. You know, he's not the only one that has learned new offenses besides Justin Herbert. The pressure of, you know, just like playing in the first game, of playing under Jim Harbaugh, trying to impress the new coaching staff. There could be a lot going on with Easton Stick that we don't know about, just in terms of his overall psyche. So I understand why the fan base is so irate, but I think Easton Stick has shown he's at least better than what last Saturday is. I feel confident in saying that when he plays again on this upcoming Saturday, it will not be as bad as it was last Saturday against the Seahawks. Like that to me, in terms of passing grade, overall passing grade on PFF, it was his worst game since his rookie season, his rookie preseason. So it was tough. It was a bad game. It was a bad watch. The film was not good. The numbers were not good. Hopefully for Easton's case, it was an outlier and not a pattern of the future.
Yeah, and having watched at least Easton Sticks, sorry, I was not going to watch Max Duggan and Luis Perez at the second half of that game. No. But having watched the first half with Easton Stick, I have to acknowledge that, yes, the play calling was vanilla. It was not super spicy, all the stuff we'll see hopefully week 1 or in the postseason or whatever. Sure, it was vanilla. But those vanilla play calls and the play calling and the spacing and the blocking did nobody any favors, and it certainly didn't do Easton Stick any favors. Yeah. Watching that game, it was very clear. If you were comparing vanilla defense to vanilla offense, which maybe the defense was trying more. Jesse Minter was certainly calling everything.
But Jesse Minter was going at it.
He didn't care. But if you're comparing offense to defense, like McDonald ate up Greg Roman's offense, and maybe it's because Roman was going super vanilla. But I think if we acknowledge and we're like, oh, it's a vanilla offense, a vanilla offense, a vanilla offense, then we also have to acknowledge that Easton Stick was running a vanilla offense, and the Seahawks just ate up the Chargers that day.
Yeah, if you just isolated the third downs, it was tough, man. There's not a lot of separation out there. There's not a lot of open concepts. There were at least two third downs that I watched where receivers ran into each other. Mm-hmm. And it's the first preseason game. Shit like that is going to happen, but he was not throwing to Ladd. He was not throwing to Josh Palmer. He was not really, he did throw to Hayden Hurst, which was a very unfortunate throw. But he didn't play the whole time with all of the starters. So there's a lot of circumstances here. Again, I'm not trying to make Easton Stick sound like this great player, But theoretically, in a regular season game, if he were to play, he would have a better setup, a more tailored game plan to him. We're going to talk about Tyler Huntley here in a second. Like, I think if you watch what Greg Roman can do with a guy of this kind of skill set, like, he would really tailor the game plan much more specifically to Easton Stick's skill set. I think we saw like one design run, which in a regular season game, that's not going to be the case. Like, Easton Stick probably gets 8 or 10 carries if I had to guess right now. So there's a lot of stuff here around the performance that I think shows that, this was a bad performance, but you can kind of understand a lot of things kind of factoring into that. And hopefully, regardless of what you're feeling about him, we all need to see the receivers be evaluated. So hopefully Easton Stick plays better this upcoming weekend.
Or, and as the topic of the video suggests, they find somebody else. So what do you think about these available veteran free agents? I hate the way this loaded, man. Oh my gosh. I promise, my word as a teacher, I would never allow this.
Yeah, me neither, because I also have OCD about this kind of stuff.
Oy.
Okay, so in terms of available veteran free agents, these are really like the three main ones. Ryan Tannehill, obviously, being the most popular name out there. Blaine Gabbert, who spent the last year, obviously, as we know, with the Kansas City Chiefs, starting that Week 18 game that sealed the deal for the Chargers to be able to pick Joe Alt. And then Brian Hoyer, who apparently was on the Kay Adams show talking about specifically potentially signing with the Chargers. I don't know. Very strange. The man turns 39 in October and has started 41 career games. He's about to be older than he has more starts. Anyways. So these are the three. There are other ones. They could do another Luis Perez. They could do the next UFL thing. But in terms of the available veteran free agents, these are the three. We just mentioned Ryan Tannehill being next to Easton Stick in quarterback rankings. That was when he was technically a starter, but for the Chargers, he would obviously be the backup behind Justin Herbert.
Yeah, Ryan Tannehill is definitely the more popular option. I get it, and I think there's a certain aspect of what he did with the Tennessee Titans, with Arthur Smith in particular, that I think kind of fits what the Chargers might want to do. I would get it. People are talking about he's maybe too expensive. He would be expensive. I would assume he would be the most expensive veteran free agent quarterback on the market. Chargers also do have, now I don't know what they have now after $6 million small moves, but they had $20 million in cap space to work with. So while that doesn't, you want a cap for in-season emergencies and stuff like that, dude, if you need a backup quarterback, that is your in-season emergency budget.
Yeah.
So they do have the finances to pull this off. So if they wanted to, they could have signed him. I don't think they end up doing that, but he is my preferred choice.
Yeah, I think, they definitely have the money to go out and afford him if they want to sign him in terms of cap space. After these other moves, they probably are at $19-18 million, depending on how you factor in top 51 and all the things like that. If you look at quarterback contracts, a bridge starter, kind of, a Gardner Minshew, Sam Darnold type, that's $10 to $12 million, depending on what exactly you're getting. And Sam Darnold is, at this point in time, the starter for the Minnesota Vikings because JJ McCarthy just tore his meniscus and is going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
So you're not paying that, but you are paying a good chunk of change. You look at the next highest paid backups here. Obviously, there's some former, first round pick contracts like Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, but Jacoby Brissett makes $8 million per year for the Patriots. Again, that's kind of bridge starter-ish money. Marcus Mariota makes 6.5. Tyrod Taylor makes 6.5. So you're probably paying Ryan Tannehill, if he is okay being the backup and he's not trying to start, that market is $6.5 to $8 million. Mm-hmm. If Ryan Tannehill is out there waiting for a chance to start games, legitimately start, then you can't afford him because he's probably going to be $10 to $12 million instead of 6 to 8. So it really depends on where Tannehill is at. We can all say, go sign Ryan Tannehill, but if he wants to wait for a starter to get injured and he wants to go start somewhere, then he's not going to sign to be a backup. He's going to wait for starter caliber money and starter caliber opportunities. Yeah.
And I'm hoping that never comes to be the case for the Chargers and that he's waiting for an opportunity that arises with the Chargers. So Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the three overall.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of either of these approaches. I think if I had to sign one of these three, I probably would choose Blaine Gabbert because he's been in the system before in
Yeah.
2014. Obviously, it was a long time ago, but there is some familiarity there. He's been, a backup behind Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes the last few years. He's only started the one game, but again, you're talking about those two guys. So I think Blaine Gabbert would probably be my preference. Like, I've never once looked at Brian Horan being like, yeah, man, I'm comfortable with that guy starting. Like, it's just not who he is. The man has been in his first NFL season was 2009. I was in ninth grade when this guy was a rookie in the NFL, and now I'm 30 years old. So I've never looked at him as somebody I'm comfortable starting a game. So to me, it's like, really, this is Blaine Gabbert. Like, this is a guy who has been a veteran backup before. He's started games in a pinch. He has, scheme and team familiarity. So that would really, of these three, be my choice.
Yes, and I also agree. I feel a little. You've turned me around on Blaine Gabbert. I get especially given the fact that he beat the Chargers last year. So and he was playing younger, I would imagine. I don't know how old he is, but he was the 2014 NFL draft.
Blaine Gabbert? No, he was earlier than that because he was drafted by the Jaguars. So Gabbert is 34. Yeah, he was 2011 was when he was drafted.
2011, that was that draft. Who am I thinking? Oh, I'm thinking Blake Bortles. I'm sorry.
Blake Bortles, yeah. So Blaine Gabbert is 34. Brian Hoyer is 39. Maybe tomato there, but we've seen Blaine Gabbert play in meaningful games more recently, as crazy as that is. And we've seen him be a starter in the NFL.
Yeah.
So
all right. We have 6 trade candidates at least. Do you want to just roll through all 6 and then talk about them, or?
Yeah, we can roll through all 6.
Okay.
So go ahead. You go first.
No, please.
Okay. Lie to you, folks. All right. So these are potential trade or cut candidates. Some of these guys, as we have on here, are battling for specific positions. We do have Nick Mullins on here. This is probably very unlikely because he just became like unquestioned quarterback too. Like they don't really have any other choice. I think they got to keep him at least for now. But of the 22 backup quarterbacks that we ranked, he was 4th. He was probably one of the best quarterbacks there. He has 20 career starts. He's played meaningful football for the 49ers and for the Vikings last year, who were in a playoff hunt down the stretch. But he has only played in Shanahan systems. For if that's a concern for some people, it might be, depending on like what you're looking for here. But if you're talking about a Chargers can go trade for any quarterback on the roster, Nick Mullins is probably the clear-cut choice for as far as the best one there. Other ones here that are available are Tyler Huntley, CJ Beathard, and then on the next screen we have Taylor Heineke, Brandon Allen, and PJ Walker. So Tyler, of those other 5, who do you want to start with?
I mean, I think the easiest one is Tyler Huntley there. 1, because of the familiarity, and then 2, because he's potentially just a cut candidate, as many of these guys might have been. Mullins not anymore.
Yeah.
But looking at Browns media and who they're covering and who they're trying to think the Browns will keep, it seems to be Jameis Winston and then DTR. So Tyler Huntley seems to be the guy that is not even just a trade candidate, but a cut target. And I think that would be wonderful for the Chargers. I don't think you need to, unless you want to bring him in early for some reason, maybe a couple weeks early. You think Herbert's injury is super serious, you got to get him in. You can wait for him to be cut. And I would certainly target him. The numbers for him aren't amazing, but if you're trying to get someone in as soon as possible to compete, of all these guys outside of Blaine Gabbert, but that was 2014, Tyler Huntley gets the offense. Like gets most of the offense. Heck, I think he would have thrown to both Hayden Hurst and the other guy I can't think of, at least Hayden Hurst. Maybe? No, he's been with a lot of teams. 4 years ago. Definitely Bengals, Falcons.
So his rookie season was 2020. I think he missed Hayden Hurst, but anyways.
Dang it. Anywho, Tyler Huntley at least knows who Greg Roman is, and I think that would be a benefit to him and the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, Greg Roman almost, and the Ravens, they almost won a playoff game with Tyler Huntley playing at quarterback in 2022. if
The
you
goal line.
remember, they were driving to take the lead with like a minute left, and then Tyler Huntley, they ran a sneak like 3 times in a row, and Tyler and was that Linderbaum or was that before Linderbaum? Might have been before. Anyways, they fumbled a snap, and Trey Hendrickson or Sam Hubbard, one of those two, ran it back for a touchdown, and that was the game. Anyways, Greg Roman knows how to build an offense around Tyler Huntley. He knows how to win with Tyler Huntley. Tyler Huntley started 10 games with Greg Roman and made a Pro Bowl with Greg Roman. Of course, I got to hype up my guy, Utah legend. But in all seriousness, if you're talking about a guy who you feel comfortable starting, like he's been a maybe low end starter, but he was 31st out of 53 quarterbacks in 2022 in EPA and CPOE combined. In 2021, that was 29th out of 45. So of the guys who have started a bunch, like he's up there in terms of backup quarterbacks. The preseason numbers right now are not great for him, but he is learning a new offense, very different offense. So yeah, like obviously this is my number one choice here.
Wait, why is that again? I can't think of why.
Yeah. If you know, you know. But it makes all the sense in the world. I'm honestly kind of surprised looking back at it that they didn't even bother signing him, because he was signed. He signed to the Browns to challenge for quarterback 3. He was not even like he was never in contention for quarterback 2 there. So I am surprised that Tyler Huntley never really got much more opportunity than that. So maybe you throw a 7th round pick their way. You know, the Chargers and Browns have kind of done that in the past, obviously. Or you can just wait and cut him. But I kind of think if he gets cut, he might be had on the waiver wire ahead of the Chargers. So
yeah,
I think if you do want to upgrade the backup quarterback spot, I think you probably got to trade for him before he gets cut.
Yeah, and the Browns are certainly active. They just traded for the center that they let walk to the Seahawks. They just traded for Nick Harris. Yeah. But yeah, I'd be certainly down for Tyler Huntley. I honestly don't recall what my evaluation of him was in college, but I remember liking him quite a bit. We certainly talked about him, and you can certainly do a lot worse. I'm surprised they did not go after him, especially because he signed QB3, and not that he's gonna break into the QB1 spot with the Chargers, but like obviously I don't know, maybe the thought that like okay, Deshaun Watson, something happens. Did he sign with the Browns? Okay, so DTR was already on the team, and so they must have
signed after Jameis, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm asking. Okay, so he said after Winston. Interesting. Yeah, I don't get it, because I mean Harbaugh so quickly, and we also had Max Duggan last year. He's already ready to move on from Max Duggan, and certainly Casey Ballman, Brandon Luis Perez. He was working with the second team already this week, 7 days after he signed. So I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't go after Huntley to begin with.
So we'll see what happens there. He's the unquestioned choice number 1 for me, ahead of Ryan Tannehill, just because, whoever they sign, if they sign somebody off of the street after waiver wires, they're going to have to learn a new offense. Outside of Blaine Gabbert and Tyler Huntley, nobody else on this list knows a Greg Roman offense, and Tyler Huntley has started 10 games in that system. So it just makes all the sense in the world. CJ Beathard, some people have pointed him out. The current Jacksonville Jaguars backup. He is competing with Mac Jones for quarterback 2. It sounds like that's more of a closer race than some people might think. But the Jaguars did trade for Mac Jones. They are kind of more invested in him, I would say. So I do kind of expect that to be Mac's job. He has not started any games since he was playing for the San Francisco 49ers in 2017 and 2018. So it's been a minute, but there is some experience there.
Yeah. Wouldn't be opposed either. Wow, man, losing your job to Mac Jones. That's what it is.
Mac Jones, anyways. The other cut candidates, these are all definitely cut candidates in my opinion. Taylor Heineke of the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, Chargers fans are kind of familiar with him because he's started a few games against the Chargers. He was 16th in said quarterback rankings, again, out of 22. Easton Stick, again, 12th. He has 29 career starts. The Falcons just drafted Michael Penix, which I still cannot believe. So he's going to get cut. It's just a matter of when. Brandon Allen of the current San Francisco 49ers. He started 9 games for the Bengals and Broncos. He was the guy who started after Joe Burrow tore his ACL as a rookie. He's currently in a QB2 battle with Joshua Dobbs in San Francisco. That sounds like Dobbs' job to lose, but from what I read today, and I messaged our friend from the San Francisco 49ers Blue Wire podcast, it sounds like Brandon Allen still has kind of a puncher's chance, but he's got to play well to end the preseason. And then PJ Walker, who the Chargers just played, was last in quarterback rankings of quarterbacks from last year. He has 9 career starts. Doesn't really sound like the Seahawks are all that interested in actually keeping him, because they obviously have Geno Smith and then Sam Howell, who they traded, I think, a 4th-round pick to go get as their potential long-term starter. So those are their main 2 that they are invested in.
Yeah, Taylor Heineke, I don't think he's particularly interesting for a maybe long-term starter by any means. There's something about the chaos that he brings. Kevin points out he's kind of a crazy man too.
Yeah.
There's just one random game where he'll have 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. And maybe the Chargers just want to go for that. Like, look, if Justin Herbert's not out there, let's go for something that could be, if they lose, they lose. But if they win, hey, something crazy could happen. The same way, no, I'm not saying they're the same player. The same way that Ryan Fitzmagic would just jump into a game and then just toss a ball like crazy and win.
Yep.
Something like that could be fun. So I don't know if that makes winning football, but it would be fun. It's not 3 points a game.
It's not 3 points a game. The Commanders did win a playoff game with Taylor Heineke back as their starter. So that same kind of thing. The Commanders had some good moments with Taylor Heineke there. Couple people talking about Bailey Zappi in the chat here. What are your thoughts about Mr. Bailey Zappi?
Okay, how many points did he score against the Chargers? Okay, let me look at Bailey. Let me just pitch it to you guys as this. Okay, Bailey Zappi. All right.
I'll get that on the screen so people know who we're talking about.
Yeah, that's totally fine. It's a 2023 season. Let's see. All right, against the Chargers, who fired their head coach about a couple weeks later. He had 13 completions for 141 yards against the Chargers. So that's kind of my thoughts on Bailey Zappi. And overall, PJ Walker was 22nd out of 22. Bailey Zappi was 21 out of 22. So he was not good overall. Then I watched him play the Chargers. That was rough. I'm okay.
Yeah, I think there's, again, the numbers and the film watching experience paints a much better picture of Easton Stick than last Saturday would indicate. Like, it gets to a certain point where I'm just like, I would rather just, trust that Easton Stick can get back to that point. And I think Bailey Zappi is well past that point. So I think if you're looking for a backup quarterback, I think in the Greg Roman offense, at minimum, it's got to be somebody who can run. Like, if you look everywhere he's been, he's had a running style quarterback. And, with the Ravens, it was RG3, who theoretically could play as well if you want to bring him back out and save him from his disastrous tweets from nowadays. But so it's been RG3, Tyler Huntley, Anthony Brown. You're talking about Josh Johnson. You're talking about Tyrod Taylor, that kind of quarterback who can come in and run and just at least like elevate the floor of the run game, over your starter if you happen to miss some games. So, some of these guys, I don't think you can really build a run game around. Brandon Allen can run. PJ Walker can run. Tyler Huntley obviously can run. I'm not building a run game with CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins and Taylor Heineke in mind. Same thing with Ryan Tannehill. Blaine Gabbert's athletic, but that's probably it here.
Yeah. Based on the offensive line play, you definitely will need to be able to run.
Yeah. So I think we're both on the same page of Tyler Huntley being the top guy. Who would you say is your second preferred option here?
Okay, so if not Tyler, so if we're assuming Nick Mullins also isn't available, given the fact that he's QB2 now, then I think I would go with I'd go with Blaine Gabbert. There's a smidgen of familiarity there. He did obviously play Week 18 last year. We saw him. After Tyler Huntley, I'd say him and then Tannehill. And if you're signing Tannehill, Herbert's got a pretty serious injury.
Yeah, I mean, if Herbert is injured, like, seriously, then I think Tannehill definitely becomes the top choice here. But if you're just talking about elevating backup quarterback play, I think it is Huntley, and then I would still probably have Gabbert second. And I'm kind of intrigued by Brandon Allen again, just because of that athletic profile. I think I would probably have him third. I would certainly have Allen ahead of Heineke, PJ Walker, Bailey Zappi, that kind of portfolio, even though, Brandon Allen doesn't have the experience.
I see Time is not a super big fan of our stuff. So I'm going to read his tweet. Holy crap, ... lowercase stick sucks. He woo kid last year also ... no, he didn't play better ... STFU. Thank you.
Mind you, you're talking to two educators here. So, yeah.
I'm going to get fired for that now.
I don't know. It's all good. Listen, like I understand why fans are frustrated after last Saturday. I agree that Easton Stick did not play well, but I think you got to look at the whole body of work sometimes. And I happen to think that Easton Stick will kind of rebound and have two better games here going forward.
Yeah, he sucked on Saturday. Like,
we all agree with you about Saturday.
Like,
it was not fun
to defend that at all.
Yeah, Brooke fell asleep while we were watching the game, and I kind of wanted to join her. So we agree that Saturday was not good. It's just, I think we're trusting the body of work here. We didn't talk about Luis Perez intentionally, I think, because a lot of the angst is directed towards Easton Stick here. He made one really good throw, but he threw like 4 fade routes. I'm not putting a ton of stock in his preseason game. I want to wait and see more from Luis Perez before I like properly judge what he can do in an NFL game. Maybe he starts on Saturday. If he does, fine. I'm anxiously awaiting him to be able to run an actual NFL offense as opposed to throwing 4 fade routes. So I'm pumping the brakes on Luis Perez, mostly just because we've seen him run 2 plays. Like, we have not seen nearly enough to say he is quarterback 2. Like, I think let's just wait and see for Luis Perez.
I 100% agree. Here was the preseason game in my mind. Okay, so snap, fade, snap, fade, snap, fade, snap, fade. And he completed one of them, and it was fucking great.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was the best play of the game. But I want to see him run an entire offense before we go, hey, QB2. I hope he's the second guy out there, though, after Easton Stick. And then maybe, game 3, it's someone ahead. If you, as a fan base, believe that Jim Harbaugh is going to get the best guys out there, if Easton Stick walked out there first, just remember that. Like, Harbaugh, he's the guy.
We can't say in Harbaugh we trust and then also hate him for playing Easton Stick.
Yes. So, in Harbaugh we trust. Guys.
Yeah. So Luis Perez, I think it's an interesting fit. I'm intrigued, but I want to see more before we judge it. I agree with their decision to play him with the second team offense. To me, like that's the game plan going forward is Easton Stick, Luis Perez, get the bulk of the reps. No offense to Max Duggan. I don't think he can process at an NFL level, but boy, can he run quarterback power. That is cool. We know he can do that. But yeah, I think whatever order Easton Stick, Luis Perez play the entire game 2, they play the entire game 3. And if you want to get a real evaluation of Luis Perez, you have to do that because you've got to be able to give him a full, offense, or at least like the bulk of an offense and, more snaps than, it was like 6 plays of a drive and then like a quick little 2-minute drill. Like that's not nearly enough for us to say that guy is quarterback 2. Like, we need more evidence here, more data of what Luis Perez can do. And if he starts on Saturday, I'm cool with it because I want to see what he can do.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't mean to clown about the fade thing I'm just poking fun at what happened. He literally signed 4 days before that game.
Yeah.
That's all I expect anybody to do at that point.
Yeah.
So it's all good. But yes, I would love to see the progression this week. Give it a good battle. And if he goes out there and gets 15, 20 dropbacks, yes, I'm fighting and chatting at the same time.
Anyway, we got Tyler posted Grammarly links in the chat today.
while I'm talking. You're just multitasking.
I love it. I love it.
Anyway, yes, I would love Luis Perez to get out there, run 15, 20 plays, or just have better pocket presence. I mean, Easton Stick did not look good even in that regard. So if that's better, great.
Yeah, no, coming in 4 days notice and playing in a preseason game, I honestly didn't think we would see him just because he doesn't have any kind of grasp of the offense quite yet. So the fact that he even played to me is impressive. Now he has another week in the system. He has some film to watch. You know, he's not anywhere close to the same kind of grasp of the playbook as Easton has, because Easton's been here since the entire offseason. So, you know, if you give him 40% of the playbook here, and, you know, is that enough for him to run actual plays? Maybe, and hopefully that is the case. But I know he'll be able to run more plays than 4 verts as he did on Saturday. So wait and see with Luis Perez. I'm optimistic there, but, you know, you got to get him more of the playbook before you can actually like evaluate him and get him some second team reps. And that seems like what the Chargers are doing right now.
Yeah, but it's lovely to hear that Jim Harbaugh said, I'm not even committing to a QB2 yet, or technically QB1, a starting quarterback in week 2. We'll let practice decide that. And again, I think it'll be Easton Stick, but it's nice to hear that Luis Perez is getting a legit shot.
Yeah. As he always says, competitors welcome. And if Luis Perez is that much better in practice, then we'll go for it.
Yes.
All right. I'm supposed to do these ads at the halfway point, and I forgot. So
we're doing another 52 minutes after this? Okay, great.
No. We're going to run this whole thing back. Okay. But in all seriousness, make sure and check out our friends over at Prize Picks. It is the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. They do have preseason games up if you're just a true sicko and you want to bet on, you want to select your favorite rookie receiver who's like a 6-string roster battle guy. I think they have some options there. So make sure you guys are getting into the swing of things with Prize Picks as we ramp up towards the regular season. Obviously, they have baseball on there as well. If you're a big baseball fan, you can check out daily fantasy sports over at prizepicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout. Again, that is prizepicks.com/guilty. Tyler, final thoughts before we head out.
Prize Picks, incredible. Use it, have some fun. My mom is about to basically pay an entire 6 months of rent based on her Prize Picks winnings. So I'm kidding. No, my mom's not.
You live in Southern California, like maybe half a month.
Yeah, well, she's not that good at Prize Picks. Anywho, I really hate the fact that we had to talk about backup quarterback trades and signings, but that's where we're at. Those are the options. We put some options on the table. Now you can all say that we've talked about them and that we acknowledge that a backup quarterback might be a thing, even though we both went on the Chargers' own channel and suggested backup quarterbacks that weren't Easton Stick on their channel. I suggested Tyler Taylor, but hey, that's just me.
Yeah. Tyler would be great, man. He would be a fantastic backup, but he's very expensive. I think it's also important that people remember that at the time of free agency, the Chargers literally had like negative cap space. So if you wanted them to sign an expensive backup quarterback at that time, they literally could not. Like, do I want Will Dissly or do I want Tyrod Taylor? Like, that's a tough decision. Like, of course I'm going to choose Will Dissly. So just keep that in mind. Drafting a quarterback, I think we can have that conversation, but the Chargers were limited on resources at the time of free agency. Just keep that in mind.
I also want to point out that I have not heard back from Time since I sent the Grammarly link, so maybe he's actually using it.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. Let me read it off. Let me close out. Oh, wait, it's gone. Here it is. 2 guys are goddamned useless. Two guys are goddamned unless Tannehill had already said her is ready to be a backup. That's going to do it for us today, folks.
This is another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. Make sure you have Grammarly installed on your computers while watching the show. In all seriousness, we appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, review, all that good stuff does help continue to grow the show. We will see you on Thursday for our preseason preview of a game that hopefully will lead to more points scored than 3. But we'll see what happens there. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us today. We'll see you next time. As always, bolt up.